Well, joining us now from Philadelphia is Claire Finkelstein. She is a professor of law and of philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Claire, a late March trial date feels like quite the statement from the judge. What did you make of how things unfolded in court today?
Well, it's really rather extraordinary because this was the case that we thought might come last. Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, had indicated a willingness to allow other cases to come first, most notably the January 6th case brought by special counsel. But that case has been delayed due to issues surrounding immunity and Donald Trump's hope that he will be declared immune now by the Supreme Court. And so this case is now zoomed ahead, and I think the judge is just fed up and has had enough with delaying tactics, which clearly were involved here, with Trump and his lawyers looking for any reason to delay the trials, after, of course, complaining that he himself had been biased by pretrial delays. So it's really throw everything at the wall and see what will stick. And I think this judge just decided time to move on and call an end to these tactics.
Claire, given that there were tactics involved, how much of a spanner does this now throw in the works of Trump's campaign calendar?
Well, I think it's a very good idea to get this trial going because the later we get towards the actual election in November, the harder it will be to proceed with these trials, and other trials will come in as well. So by moving ahead with the end of March, and starting jury selection on March 25th, as has now been set on the docket, it looks like this case will actually find a clear spot in the calendar relative to other cases. The Georgia case may be delayed quite a long time. There are deep complications there. The January 6th case is indefinitely delayed, and we have no idea what will happen with the classified documents case in Florida, so which is also federal court, and also hangs, by the way, on the immunity question because it is a federal case. So it is a good idea to get this going. And of course, this was the first indictment. So it makes sense to be the first trial.
Claire, I see Trump chose to appear in court today. I understand he's previously said he was forced to appear when he wasn't. Is that all getting him political points?
I don't know. It's very hard to tell because there are so many different claims he makes. I doubt even his followers can keep up with all of them. They sort of blend in together. There was no, of course, that is incorrect. It's important to remind your viewers that he was not forced to appear. He doesn't have to appear in any of these interlocutory appeals that are going on, or any of these interlocutory claims that are being run down. His lawyers can appear for him. But the effort to try to claim that this is interfering with his rights as a candidate is just one of the many things that Donald Trump is claiming here in order to try to gain sympathy and also to try to claim delay and to ask for further delays because of his campaign schedule.
Claire, you mentioned some of the host of charges that Trump faces. When you consider the cases, this one on hush money sounds a little more trivial, perhaps, but I understand it's also the only one where he can't actually pardon himself if he does actually get back into the White House?
That's right. So the two cases in which a self-pardon will not work are this case and the Georgia case, because they are indictments based on violations of state law being considered by state courts. And federal presidents, of course, do not have the right to pardon themselves under state law. Now, they can make life very difficult for state prosecutors, and I very much expect that if Donald Trump is elected in November, then if this case is somehow still going on after January, he would make it very, very difficult for Alvin Bragg in all sorts of ways, putting pressure on Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, and so forth. But they actually don't have any real power here, and so it's very important that the state prosecutions be allowed to go ahead and go ahead in a timely way, because if he does become president again, you can bet that he'll use the weight of his office to interfere any federal process that he possibly can.
Well, it certainly sounds like timing is indeed everything. Claire Finkelstein, a professor of law and philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Great to have you back on Al Jazeera and sharing your thoughts. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks for having me.
Now, the families of Israeli captives held by Hamas since October 7th are protesting, as you can see, outside Israel's Defense Ministry compound in Tel Aviv right now. Let's go back to Hamdah Salhut. She joins us again from occupied East Jerusalem. Hamdah, what else can you tell us about this protest? Obviously, there's been a huge amount of pressure on Netanyahu and his government.
This is an incredibly large demonstration happening in Tel Aviv outside of the Kiryah, known as the Defense Ministry, and it's actually where that meeting with the CIA director, the Israeli Prime Minister, and other members of the security apparatus are currently. They're inside of that building, and some of the family members of captives who have simply been saying that time has run out, they released a statement tonight saying that they were going to restart intensified protests, calling for re-elections, calling for Netanyahu to step down simply because he has not prioritized releasing the captives. You'll remember before the war began, there were weekly demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of Israelis against the government's judicial reforms. Now, that same group of demonstrators, known as the Kaplan Force, said they were coming back this Thursday, starting up these demonstrations once again to make their voices heard in the thousands. And what these families are trying to relay is that it was a mistake on behalf of the Prime Minister to not send that delegation back to Cairo for a second day of mediations and negotiations. We're more than 4 months into this war, entering the 5th month, actually, and they're saying that the Israeli government is not recognizing their plight and that their family members are not being prioritized. The Israeli Prime Minister has said repeatedly that he has red lines when it comes to getting a deal to release the captives, and that military pressure is the only way that can get done. But these family members have been saying for months to give whatever concessions the other side wants, even if it means ending the war, if it means the captives can come back from Gaza. But the Israeli government has refused that. They've said they are going to do things their way and that they have other goals of the war they need to accomplish as well. So the families of the captives are incredibly angry. And this meeting that's going on inside the Defense Ministry, where the Prime Minister is, this protest is happening right outside of it. Family members are incredibly angry tonight, Nastasia.
They're certainly very angry, Hamdah. I've been wondering how united they are in terms of what they actually want to see the government do. We've obviously seen protests also take place at some of the border crossings, stopping aid trucks. Is there a kind of united front amongst captives' families about a kind of government policy moving forward?
The issue of the captives is of the utmost importance and sensitive within the Israeli society. There are different forms of these protests that happen almost every single day. Some of them are a little more subdued than others. The one we're seeing tonight is essentially the resurgence of a larger protest movement within the Israeli society. But when it comes to the issue of the captives, it is seemingly that everyone is on the same page, though there are different levels and variations of what should be happening. For example, the protests and demonstrations that are going on at the border crossings are people who are more right-wing, people who are from settlements wanting to block aid from going into Gaza to a population that is already starving. And the people who are demonstrating in Tel Aviv are trying to get a message across to the government, saying that there should be whatever is in their power that can be done in order to bring back the captives. So while the overarching message between all protest movements is the same, is that the captives should be brought back, there are different levels of what these groups are thinking. The ones protesting at the border say there should be no humanitarian aid, there should be no anything really until the captives captives are brought back. And the families are saying, just give the other side whatever it is they want if it means that we can have our loved ones back. And these families have been saying that these demonstrations are going to be bigger, they're going to be louder, they're going to be perhaps even more than once a week. They're going to block roads in order to send that message to the Israeli government that they are not happy with the current policy.
Hamdah Salhut there with the latest for us from occupied East Jerusalem. Thank you so much, Hamdah.